Have you told your friends that you see ghosts?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gina Rodriguez returns in Not Dead Yet.
I'm back, baby.
Who is that?
Oh, she's the obituary writer.
And Brad Garrett joins the brilliant ensemble cast.
Titan, Maverick, Titan of all Mavericks. These are all words used to describe me.
Not Dead Yet. Season premiere. Tonight, 8:30, 7:30 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Daycare is the done thing for around about 1 million families every year. We've got data from the Department of Education. Figures show something like 1.4 million kids in Australia are attending daycare on any given 3-month period. In any given term, about 1.5 million children are attending daycare. This is a big industry. It's a huge sector, and it affects all of us. It affects us as parents. Research shows that a lot of parents don't really want to take their kids to daycare, but cost of living, the reality is double income is sometimes just an absolute requirement, but it also affects our kids. And while a high proportion adjust really well, the reality is a large minority of kids who are in daycare, unfortunately, they don't like it at all. I was going to say they hate it. That's a strong word, but Kylie, you've worked in daycare, and I don't know. I mean, some kids really do hate it, don't they? They cry from the minute they get dropped off to the minute they get picked up. It's really distressing.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful for the carers. It's awful for the parents. It's really hard watching a child be that distressed for so long.
So in today's conversation, we want to talk to you about daycare dramas and specifically what we can do about helping our kids to adjust well to daycare. I guess to preface this introduction, there's a world-leading daycare researcher. His name is Jay Belsky. Jay has been researching in this area for 40 years now or thereabouts. He recently dropped an absolute bomb on what has previously been pretty well-established science that kids thrive as a result of daycare. Blown that up. And he's basically said they don't really thrive as much as we thought that they did. Research is not pointing in that direction. There are some questions that we need to ask that are going to make every caring parent just a little bit nervous. And he sort of is saying we probably need to worry a little bit about daycare, even though we're consistently told not to worry about it. Now, I'm not saying this to lump guilt or anything like that on anyone. Like, it is the reality. But there are some things that we can do to minimize those daycare dramas, and that's what we want to talk about, because if you're dropping the kids to daycare today or tomorrow or sometime this week, you want to make sure that the kids are not in that minority who are really feeling distressed about it. Kylie, after the years that you spent working in various centres, what do you think would be a couple of things that would be most important for parents to really get good at when it comes to this whole daycare drama thing?
My top 3 things would be setting up structures, working around transitions with your kids, developing dialogue around what this looks like, and building partnerships with your carers.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
So if we were to break that down,
Yep.
point number 1, setting up structures, transitions. Transitions might not be something that the average parent would use in their day-to-day conversation, but they probably are doing it without knowing.
So this is the thing where you say, all right, kids, time to get in the car. We're off to kindy.
That's a transition point.
And it's a pretty rough one, the way that I just did it.
That's exactly right. So with most small kids, they need time to prepare for a transition. They need to know that in 5 minutes' time, maybe 10 minutes' time, it might be a 10-minute warning and then a 5-minute warning that this is going to happen.
On that, I think it's really important to highlight as well, a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old maybe who's off to daycare, they don't necessarily know what 5 or 10 minutes means.
That's exactly right.
So can you talk through, for parents to give them that 5 and that 10 and that 2-minute warning or whatever, how do they do it in a way that makes sense to the child, since 10 minutes doesn't really mean anything, especially if you're only 2 or 3?
I think it's that constant reinforcement. They won't know. If you've got an analog clock or even a digital clock, you can teach them the numbers so that they can see what it's happening. But at that really young age, it really is just about that constant reinforcement, which is why you wouldn't say just once, in 5 minutes' time we're leaving.
Right.
You would have a number of interactions with them leading up to that time so that they know.
So it's consistent reminders about the transition that's coming. And as they hear the number getting smaller, it was 10, now it's 5, now it's 3, now it's 2, now it's 1. that actually does mean something to them. They can feel the difference.
If you don't want to use a number, it might be that you play a song and they know that once that song finishes, it's the same song every time for that particular activity. And at the end of that song, they know that that's a transition point. That's the time where they're now going to have to go put their shoes and socks on and we're going to jump in the car.
For a number of years in our home, I used to do that with the piano. So I don't play the piano well, but I've got enough skills on the piano to play a handful of songs. And we used to have a family meeting every morning. And I would play that song on the piano, and the kids would know that by the time that song was finished, everyone had to be in the living room so that we could have our 5 or 10 minutes together as a family. It worked so well.
Music is actually one of the best things you can do for engaging kids because it's so easy. They don't have to keep the time going. They understand and know how the song works because it's the same song every day, and it really does help them when they're still learning to read time and things like that to know, okay, the chorus is coming now. This is about to finish and I'm going to have to keep moving forward.
So this idea of setting up structures, it's about more than just transitions. It's about predictability. It's about routine. The kids understand the routine. We go from A to B to C, and then we're in the car and we go to kindy or daycare or preschool or whatever it is that you call that. So setting up structures, having those transitions and those systems in place matters.
The other reason structures are so important is because everything about that makes their life predictable.
And that makes them feel safe and secure.
Everything is about their sense of security.
The second thing that you said after setting up structures and getting those transitions right was we've got to develop dialogue.
This is great because you're having conversations with your children all the time. This is about helping them to see what is happening in their world, asking them questions and helping them to see all of the exciting things that are happening in their world. When you pick them up, ask them what they did today. What was their favorite?
They will tell you.
What was their favorite thing that they did?
Yep.
And they'll pull you across the room and they'll show you the book corner or wherever they dressed up as a fairy, or they love you being a part of their world. And the more you can engage in that space and create dialogue around it means that when you come home, you can continue that dialogue at home and continue to build excitement around what might happen tomorrow.
I really like this, and it's something that I didn't do well when our kids were young, usually because I always felt like I was in a rush. So I'd get to the pickup and I would walk in and I'd sign the book and I'd say, all right, let's go. Because we've got to get your bag and we've got to get your shoes and all your stuff, pick up your drink bottle, whatever, and we've got to get in the car. We've got to get home because we've got to get to swimming lessons. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. It always felt like it was a hassle. And what you're saying is slow this down. When you walk in there, sit down on the floor and say, show me what you did. Tell me what you did. Make it so that you're comfortable there. You're not rushing to get out. It's actually a nice place to be because as they see that comfort and they get to explore the environment with you and show you their capability and competence in that environment, they're going to want to be there more. That's what I'm hearing.
Definitely.
That's what I'm layering into what you've just said. I might be putting more words in your mouth than you spat out at me, but that's kind of where I see this going. When you say develop dialogue as well, I think about that advice that we gave last week with big kids where you say, hey, what are you looking forward to at school today? Surely this has got to be part of it as well.
There's real power in helping our kids look forward to tomorrow.
Optimism and hope, predictors of well-being, and definitely something that's going to reduce children's anxiety and difficulty around this. So we're validating, we're developing dialogue with the kids, and we're also making sure those structures are good. The third thing that you said is one that I got really excited about when you said it. It makes so much sense. You mentioned building partnerships.
This is really important for your children. They need to see you having a good relationship with the people you're leaving them with. And just like it's important for you to spend time with them in the afternoon so you can be a part of their day, starting the day off as calmly as possible and allowing yourself as much margin as you can within your own framework to be there, have a chat with a caregiver in the room and just do that beautiful handover.
I'm feeling even more guilty now because I just mentioned I would walk in, grab the kids and walk out. In all honesty, I didn't even know the names of the people who were looking after our children in various daycare scenarios more often than not. I did know some of them. I'm not completely oblivious, but I really didn't know most of them. You were the one that had the relationships. You did most of it because I was traveling a lot, but I would literally be just in transaction. Hi, how'd she go? Great. See you later. What you're saying again is by slowing down and creating that relationship, I guess when you do that, you get to find out how well they know your child, but you can have important conversations like things aren't going so well or what support can we give each other because this is a little bit tricky. the relationships,
mornings
everything.
are usually really hard in any daycare centre. Mornings can be really tricky to connect with the caregiver, which is why the afternoons really matter. Most people aren't picking up at exactly the same time, where often there's a rush hour in the morning for drop-off. So you might not be able to have the kinds of in-depth conversations that you'd like to be having with your caregiver in the mornings. But that's why either end is so important, helping your children to see that relationship and being able to hand over in such a way that they feel equipped to deal with the challenges that your child might be experiencing in that day.
If you know anybody whose kids are struggling with daycare, make sure you pass this podcast along. Hopefully it'll be helpful. 3 things. We want to, set up structures, develop dialogue, build partnerships. Dropping kids off at daycare is a necessary reality for a whole lot of people. If we do it well, it gives parents respite. It places kids in potentially really enriching environments with great people who are caring for them. But things are going to work out best if we can spend time with our munchkins, talking positively about the experience and discussing their joyful moments and reviewing their activities and helping them to build that excitement for what's coming next. If there's distress, make sure that you evaluate whether the childcare centre is a good match for your child and have ongoing communication with educators and implement strategies so that you can help them to positively adjust over time. Fingers crossed, this will help. If there's been daycare dramas, the Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. For more info about making your family happier, we've got it all at happyfamilies.com.au, or you can follow us on our social media platforms. We've got Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families on Facebook, or we're on Instagram and TikTok.